Hey, what's up you guys, it's Dorothy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to go into chapter 20 of the game by Lindsay Miller, so I hope that you guys are ready for this video. This video may contain sensitive topics and foul language. If you do not wish to continue, I suggest you click off of the video now. You have been warned. Chapter 20. Devin's parents, though skeptical, agreed to let Devin spend the night at Jim's with Leah so long as all of them were in the living room and their hands were inside at all times. Jim assumed Devin was joking about that. Leah wasn't so sure. What? Jim asked as they sat in the car and finished off the last of their snacks. Like you're going to go at it while I'm right there? Jim fake heaved and Leah forced herself to smile. She knew she should have laughed. If it were any other day she would have, but it was today and she felt like happiness was a dream. Maybe if she faked it she would be happy. There'd been a moment with Jim after Nora was out of that she felt vaguely happy. It had faded as fast as it had come though. Ask your mom, Jim said. I want to get home. Leah's mom was easier to convince. Leah had spent enough time at Jim's over the last decade, but Devin's presence was just a new wrinkle between her mom's brows. Jim's mom worked in security and promised to keep an eye on the three. Ben's killer was still on the loose anyway. Jim's house was safer. They agreed to it. Devin texted them midway through their parents' three-way phone call. Now they're just talking about Ben. Leah pushed open the car door. Let's clean up before we head back then. The last few days of driving, everyone around had tracked in dead leaves, mud. Jim tossed several empty cans to Leah and pulled the floor mats out of their car. Leah bent over the back of the car and gathered up every piece of junk she could find. Arms full, she stood and looked for a trash can. It was bolted to a post at the edge of the parking lot. Behind it stood a hooded figure. Leah froze, but the figure didn't. They were short and hooded, and their hands were tucked into their pockets. Leah couldn't make out their face. Jim shook out another floor mat. Leah, just toss it. Jim looked up at her. What are you doing? Turn around, Leah said. Jim's eyes widened and they pivoted. The figure in the distance waved. That was far too friendly for a murderer, probably. Well, screw that, Jim said. Let's get out of here. By the time they had locked the car doors, the figure was gone. They had vanished over the crest of the hill and into the neighborhood around the park. Jim kept their water gun up and ready to go. Leah raced to the trash can to toss their trash and studied the footprints near it. Converse, not helpful. It's my assassin, right? Leah asked. Not. Yes, has to be, they waved. Jim laughed. We're fine. We're paranoid, but we're fine. Let's just go. Leah walked backward to the car, one hand clasped tightly around Jim's jacket. There was no movement in the trees. As they drove away, light flickered twice in the distance like two glowing eyes, but they turned a corner and it was gone. Leah sank down into her seat. Of course, they picked now to show their face. Who do you think it is? Jim asked. They spent the whole car ride and an hour at Jim's house discussing it, but they were no closer to a definite answer when Devin showed up. He fiddled with the straps of his bag and lingered in the entryway. I'm glad you guys invited me. I keep having weird dreams and stuff, you know. Yeah, Jim said. We know. They all knew what Ben looked like dead, and there was no one else they could talk to about that. Come on, Jim clapped him on the shoulder and nodded toward the living room. I think we all need this. The Hastings house was an odd mix of old, sagging furniture covered in blankets, half-put-together computers, and crafting supplies. Otter, the family cat, wove her way between their legs and beneath the coffee table to sniff at Devin until she was satisfied. Mr. Hastings came back inside and Otter scrambled up his legs until he gathered her up like a baby. Now we're supposed to keep an eye on you, which should be easy, Mr. Hastings said. He locked the door behind himself and the security system let out a comforting beep. Leah, we haven't seen you outside of school since 8th grade. We have a lot of catching up to do. Mr. Hastings put them through all the usual questions and recruited them to help cook dinner. Devin chopped onions while Jim minced garlic, and Leah, in charge of making the rice, dabbed at Devin's stinging eyes with a dishcloth when the onions became too much. Mr. Hastings kept an eye on them as he dealt with the chicken. Mrs. Hastings got home with Jim's brother just as dinner was ready. Over dinner, they talked about school and orchestra, the game a little bit, and Jim's disastrous attempts at carpentry for the school play and everything except the deaths. Jim's little brother Harrison was in band and talked to Devin about music nonstop. No one else in the family played, and Devin didn't seem to mind. Mrs. Hastings only stopped Harrison when he forgot to eat. It was sort of love Leah couldn't comprehend. Jim's parents didn't care what their kids wanted to do, but went all in every time. Leah's parents had tried to curate her high school years as if she were an art gallery only open to college admissions. Excuse me. I told them to cool it on questions about how you are, Jim whispered after their mom had asked about how Leah was liking school. Sorry, I didn't know how long it will last. Leah laughed and smiled. With any luck, they'll be too into talking about orchestra with Devin. Her mom kept texting about the sleepover and what they would do after, and it made Leah feel like a toddler. That was probably on purpose, but more than anything, it felt like a normal, happy night. The house creaked all night long after everyone crawled into bed. It had been easy to forget the horrors outside while everyone was awake. Devin helping Harrison with his music homework, and Leah destroying Mr. Hastings in the game of Risk in record time. There was no pressure. There was no threat. It was harder to not see Abby and Ben every time Leah closed her eyes. Once the main light went out and the dark oozed around her. "I keep thinking about Omelette," whispered Leah. "He didn't want to leave Abby." "I'm glad we found Ben." Jim reached underneath the blanket and laced their fingers with Leah's. "If we hadn't, May would have." Jim's parents had left their bedroom door open and Devin had been banished to a sleeping bag on the far side of the room. Of course, once everyone else had left, he had dragged it nearer to Leah so they could talk. Leah shuddered. His sleeping bag rustled, fingers gently touching the ends of her hair. "You need more sleep," he said softly, as if she were an easily spooked cat. "We all do." She licked her lips and turned to face him. "Have you been sleeping?" "You know I haven't been," he replied. "It's weird that it happened so soon after Abby." "They questioned me longer after Ben," Leah said. "Two kids in Lincoln both playing the game, dead within 2 weeks of each other. What could Ben have ever done that someone would want to kill him?" Whoever had been after Ben had enjoyed killing him, and that made it much worse. "Maybe they just wanted to kill somebody," Jim said. "Some people like killing." Leah shuddered. "I think the police thought I did it a little bit at first. I'm pretty sure Omelette would have eaten you if you hurt Abby." Devin's long fingers wove their way through her hair, curling at the ends. In the dark, she could only see the soft glint of his eyes. "Abby tripped, and what reason would you have for killing Ben? His assassin got him? I don't know." She shook her head and sighed. "I keep thinking about his hand. That was where he got shot, and they destroyed it." "I know we're here to talk," Jim said, "but I don't know if I can handle this level of gruesome before sleeping." "Sorry," Leah said. "Have your parents been doing that thing where they only mention how sad it is that their plans were cut short?" Devin groaned. "No, but my mom's friend did. She bright futures snuffed out too soon. Just as bad." Leah brought up one hand to Devin's face. "I hate it." Her fingertips brushed his jaw. Excuse me. She had never imagined sleeping near him. That seemed intimate and tender, like sharing a cup of tea or a deep, dark secret. She traced the slant of his jaw and the arc of his nose, felt the slight bump of a scar near his eye and the flutter of his lashes against her knuckles, and she rested her hand against his cheek. He ran his hand from her scalp to her shoulders. "Having plans doesn't make a person more valuable," Devin whispered. He booped her nose. "If I hear one more person lament the loss of Abby but not Ben because of how promising she was, I'll scream. They always bring up his football as if they need to find something for him to be good at, for him to be worth mourning." Jim, on their back and glaring at the ceiling, rolled their head back and forth. "It's so gross," Leah offered. Devin snorted. "That's one word for it, and not the one I would use." "Do you think the school would be as sad if it were other kids?" Leah turned over onto her stomach. "Not the other students, but like the teachers, Principal White?" "They would say yes," Jim said, "but they're liars. They make such a big deal out of college and life plans." Leah folded one arm under her cheek and lay the other near Devin's shoulder. Cheek squished against her arm, sight slightly blurred. She closed her eyes. "There was no danger here. I have no clue what I'm doing," Leah said. "I wonder what they would say if it had been me." Even the idea was selfish in her mouth, drying out the words till her tongue stuck to her teeth. "Remember Mr. Allen?" Jim asked. "He told me not to bother with law school. He said I would be better suited to a liberal arts degree." Devin gagged. "What does he think people study before law school?" "Who knows," Jim said. "And who cares? People work. People exist. Some don't even go to high school. They're the ones up in arms over shoving us into majors." "Devin, how did you know you wanted to be a doctor?" Leah asked. Devin shifted onto his back, his silhouette like a sharp peaks of cliff against the dim light flittering in from outside. "I broke my arm the summer of 7th grade, and the doctor was really nice. She worked in the ER. My mom is a doctor, but dermatology was never really interesting. I could sort of see myself being there one day. I might change my mind. I think a lot of people do. My cousin didn't realize until her first gross slap that she couldn't do corpses." Jim hugged Leah and pulled away. "She does research now." "Yeah, we'll find out if I vomit, I guess," he said, and swallowed. They all knew he wouldn't. He hadn't when they found Ben. "I didn't know what to do before all this happened." Leah reached out and traced the crests and dips of Devon's face, his breath warm on her skin. Now what? You don't have to go to college right out of high school, you know, Jim said. You could work for a while or do trade school. They just don't like telling us those options. They weren't prestigious enough. That was the implication, but Leah was already the less than ideal student. To be average was to be invisible. I know, Leah said, but I still feel like a failure sometimes. It was impossible not to. They started studying for the ACT and SAT in middle school, and even before they had to pass the state test, schools took out newspaper ads as if it were 1970 to advertise their students' college choices with no options for kids who were taking a break, working, or going to trade school. Most of the counselors at Lincoln were nice and kept community college information on hand, but the principal never mentioned it when talking about futures during school assemblies. It was as clear as day, and the ways Abby's death was cast against Ben's. If he weren't a football star, people might have written his loss off altogether. It made Leah sick. Jim yawned and rolled over. I'm going to put my earbuds in. Don't be weird and make me regret this. Leah glanced at Devon. Do people think we're incapable of being alone together? Yeah, I think so. He pushed himself onto his elbows and dropped his chin onto his hands. You're really good at puzzles. Thank you, Leah excelled. Not like that. Will get me far in life. The escape room has already been invented. Who would want to leave a room you're in anyway? He asked. Leah leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, and suddenly his hand was tangled in her hair. His gasp died against her lips, and he tilted his head till their noses were pressed together. His thumb stroked her ear. Leah pulled away. He kissed the tip of her nose. I would rather not betray the trust of the people who are basically my second set of parents, Leah said. But you're not going back to the other side of the room, right? That is the end of this chapter. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.